Hello, everybody. Welcome back. And it's amazing to have writer director Maggie Gyllenhaal with us. Welcome, Maggie. So glad you could join us.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, I wanted to ask about some of your collaborators in the film. I was greatly impressed with the sound and the score of the film, which becomes an essential element of the film. In particular, the fact that you introduced 50s and 60s songs and the soundtrack had a feel. It sounded to me like an old record was playing as a sound motif throughout the film. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that. I think when I was thinking about composers, well, actually let me go back further. I think music was always a an important part of my kind of thinking about the movie. It was always very kind of in a poetic way. I wasn't really thinking, oh, I want this song in it, or uh, I really took me a long time to land on a composer or even start thinking about composers, but just as a way of understanding the vibe and the tone and the feel, like Afonso Goncalves, who cut my film. He and I, before we really spoke much about the actual movie, when I was in prep and then all the way through shooting, we were sending each other music over text. Um, Music that had nothing to do, like literally overtly with the movie, but just things that were on our minds, things that in a poetic way had something to do with the movie. Um, so music was kind of always a way of thinking about it. But then, yeah, I started listening to film scores probably at the end of the editing process, really. And the temp stuff was also really interesting when we were cutting. But I didn't. There's so little film score that I loved, um,
Mhm.
and I but then my DP is funny. She said to me, "Don't put music in it. Don't put music in it at all." You know, she's French. She's a music. Do
Hélène,
not
of
put
course.
any score. And I was like, "No, no. I want music in the movie. I just don't. I don't want it to feel. I don't want it to manipulate you. I don't have a set thing that I want the audience to feel that I'm then gonna, whatever, like bring up the violins or whatever to get you to feel it. I don't know exactly what I want you to feel. I want to leave it as open and as interesting and unusual as the actors. And so, yeah, I did sort of want the score to be its own character in the movie and also to feel like its own character that like reverberates against the given circumstances and the characters you see on screen, and then how you feel about that is up to you. But yeah, also I started to realize I wanted to feel, first of all, kind of lo-fi. Like in the Roberta Flack, for instance, that plays over that scene, you hear the crackling of the recording in the speaker, or in the Sophia Loren song that you hear when the family comes in.
Arrives, which I wanted to. I'm glad you brought up the Sophia Loren moment. Why is it that Lida sings in Greek the Sophia Loren song? It blew my mind, that scene.
Why did I put that song there, you mean?
Yes, I mean it blew my mind. I cannot put my finger on it why it was so, but
Okay.
it gave me chills.
It's interesting because before we started live here, you said you wanted to talk about the editing, and
Yeah.
I that it's pretty early on in the movie, and Afonso, who cut my film, Goncalves, as I said, he and I had done this short film together during the pandemic. Like it was a film I shot in 36 hours with my husband, and Fonzie cut it. And so I knew from just working on that, which we did remotely, that he and we understood each other in like a particularly special way, even though we'd never met. But we get into the editing room, we're like going, I see his assembly, and I was like, okay, that's cool. That's not the movie, but like that's interesting. you know and I was like, wow, it's wild, someone else's movie. And then we start working together, and we're moving through, and we're starting to get each other's language. And then I said, I want to cut the arrival of the family on the boat to this Sophia Loren song. And he was like, what? And I said, yeah, basically, when I was looking for music for Ed and Olivia to dance to at the dance party at the end while we were
Mhm.
shooting. It didn't necessarily have to be the music that ended up in the movie, but I wanted something great. And my husband, Peter Sarsgaard, who's also in the film, was basically like my music supervisor unofficially. And I said to him, "Can you find me some great like 60s Greek music?" Um, and I almost wanted that music to be, I know I'm going on a tangent, but
No,
to
no,
be
no. Go ahead.
like you know in the Jim Jarmusch movie, Stranger Than Paradise, when they have the Screaming Jay Hawkins song and like it plays against the 80s, you know. So anyway, I wanted something like that. And he pulled up all these great old Greek songs. And one of them was that Sophia Loren song that he pulled up for the dance party. Okay, it doesn't work at all for the dance party, but I loved the song. And when I heard it at lunch this day that he came by, I was like, we should cut the arrival of the family to that song. It'll be like in The Godfather when they play like the opera over all the gangsters getting shot, you know, the exact opposite. And so then whatever it's almost, it's not just ironic. I'm not that interested in just irony, but something about the idyllic fantasy of this Greek vacation hitting up against the reality of what it actually is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. My follow-up question, and you did mention your cinematographer, Ellen, who is brilliant.
Yes.
Uh, but I before get to Elaine, I wanted to ask you that I mean, you've worked a lot as an actress, and you're in movie sets, and you know a lot about filmmaking. But what was it like for you now to be involved in pre-production and post-production? Was
Yeah.
that something completely different to what you were used to? Tell us about your experience.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's really right that I had spent a lot of time on a lot of sets and had a real, even though obviously directing was very, very different, that's a world I know. That's a rhythm I know. I know. In fact, even like in Greece, you know, they shoot 10-hour days and I have the rhythm of a 12-hour day from making films here. So I'd always be like, what? We're not done. I've got 2 more hours in me. You know, I know that. Pre-production, well, pre-production was interesting in that it was happening in a pandemic. We shot the movie September, well, basically October of 2020. So pre-vaccine, we were really one of the first films that wasn't going back into production to get going. So American films. So a lot of pre-production felt almost like a way of like a salve for how scary what was happening in the world was. We were like, what do you mean? We're going to have a budget meeting. We're totally going to get the movie up and running. We're going to, so there was a real pleasure actually in some of the just minutia of budget and logistics that, I don't know, maybe I just enjoy that anyway. I really didn't mind that. Once I was really directing though, and we were in real prep, you know, I was like, I don't want to be on any more budget calls. But but I would say maybe one interesting thing to talk about in terms of prep. I I remember I shadowed a director on The Deuce when I was shooting that as an actress, and I went on a scout with them, and I was like, this is so fucking boring. I could not wait to get off of that bus. But on my own scout, I mean, I loved it. The whole day went by. I didn't know that we'd, you know, was lunch already, or, you know, it was interesting when you care a lot how different it feels. But so Helen,
Yes.
Helen, yeah, Helen, one of the things she said to me when I first met her, and I met a lot of DPs when I was thinking about who I wanted to shoot it, partially because I'd never done it before. And Helen said, oh, I met one DP who's so brilliant, whose work I love so much, who told me that he doesn't prep. And whenever I say that in a room full of filmmakers, they laugh like it's a joke. I didn't even know how insane that was at the time. Helene said like exactly the opposite to me, basically. She said, I really believe in prep. I believe in prep because it ultimately gives you freedom. And we spent many, many hours every day when she was in Paris and I was in the States during the pandemic, imagining the kind of, I wonder how to even explain it, almost the fantasy version of the movie, the dream
Hmm.
version of the movie. We had no locations, but more than that, and imagining how we would shoot it, but in order to understand what the scenes were really about, so that you don't I mean, like, as an actress, I've shot scenes around a dinner table where the director didn't know what the scene was about. And so we shot everyone's, two sizes on everyone. Not only that, my POV of all the other five people at the table and their POV of, so you're just spending 3 days at the fucking dinner table. When, if you know what the scene is about and your DP knows what the scene is about, then, the whole thing might be about someone taking their fork and eating a potato off of someone else's plate. So she and I really got to understand in a kind of unconscious way what the scenes were about. And she, we did shot lists, we did, took photographs. And I remember saying to Helene, I'm an actress. I'm never going to tell Olivia Colman and Ed Harris, hey, before you got here, I imagined that you're going to be sitting on this sofa and then walk over to the window and you're going to be at the typewriter and then walk over to the kitchen sink. I'm not going to say that to these brilliant geniuses. She said, no, 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 do not worry. They will do exactly as you imagine.
Oh my
And that's totally not true. but because she and I really prepped and really understood together why this scene was in the movie, we could play jazz every day with the
God.
incredible players who are in front of us and adjust. And so that's really, that's what pre-production was like moving into production. And then post-production, I mean, God, that's like a whole nother chapter of a book. I mean, there's so much to say. I would say editing was, in some ways, I think it was my favorite part of the whole thing.
And which leads me to a question about, I love how you modulated young Lita's story. Um, Editing wise, was that challenging, figuring out how much of young Lita's story to, and when to bring us, and not forget about, Olivia Colman's Lita's.
Um, I think I know as an actress that if a script is really solid groundwork that you can rely on, that ultimately it gives you so much more freedom of expression. If it's your job, for example, as an actor to narratively make a scene work, you're really restricted in terms of how you can express yourself. If it narratively works and is solid, you could express yourself in the most unusual, wild way, and it will still
Mhm.
serve the movie. So before I started, I really wanted to make sure that the structure of the flashbacks made emotional sense. I do not think of the flashbacks as exposition. I am not looking at them in terms of like, now you can understand why this woman is how she is. I don't think that's the purpose they serve. It's more like something in the present shakes something, springs a leak, and then all of a sudden she is back in the past.
Correct.
And and so it really has to make emotional sense. There has to be a real, and I don't even mean logic. I'm talking about a kind of unconscious logic.
Mhm.
Um,
It makes me think of this musical theater composer friend of mine said that in great musical theater, the songs don't stop the action. Um, they move the story forward, and in your flashbacks, they don't stop. the motion forward of the story, it actually propels it even further up.
Yeah, and there were times when we were cutting. Yeah, so basically, the where the flashbacks sit didn't change in the cut. You know how they were expressed changed. We stripped them back. We really let them live in a more poetic space, I think, than they originally did in the script. We found we don't need an explanation of this in the past. Just the image is enough. And then now and then we would hear, I mean, I found when I was cutting, I mean, there was a really interesting thing that happened with us when we were cutting, which is, like I said, it was really in the pandemic. I got my first vaccine in like right before the sound mix. So there were no
Wow.
vaccines, and it was just me and Fonzie and his assistant, and that's it. Like just us. I literally did not show my film to an audience until Venice. So
Wow.
it's like ever, but people saw it, friends and people who we respected and wanted their opinion, but nobody really messed with us, so we were really going just for the film we wanted to make. But we would get notes. I would find we try to show the film to like 3 or 5 people at once. Let's show this cut to this group. And if all of them came back and said, I miss Leda, I miss Olivia. In this part, I've been away from her too long. We would take them seriously. I mean, there's one time I think where I just cut to her standing by some cliffs for a second, like kind of swaying, and it was enough. I never got that note again. In the middle of the affair sequence, where I think the movie does switch over into young Leda as the sort of narrator for a minute. People were telling me they missed Olivia. I cut for a second. I just found a shot of her standing in the cliffs, kind of like this, thinking, and then they were satisfied, you know?
Um, you make a choice that I just adore. The fact that you have Olivia Colman and Jessie Buckley, and they don't look like each other, and they're just we totally accept it. We make the leap. Can you tell us about that choice?
Yeah, well, I think when I took on the adaptation, I think that this 20-year age gap was the biggest risk, right? Cinematically, that's an issue, Um, uh, and I decided when I was adapting, I'm not going to worry about it during the adaptation. I'm going to construct the script how I would construct it if I could stretch an actress 20 years with no issue. And then I thought, well, should I use one actress and age her? Or I thought, no, that's like fake. It never works. And if I'm making a film that's really asking people to look honestly at something, it's basically about being truthful about something complicated and difficult. You can't fake the audience out ever, because then they'll just be like, forget it, I don't want to go there, they're lying to me. So you can't fake them at all. So then I thought, no, I can't do that. I need to have 2 actresses. And it occurred to me, as an actress, I wanted the best actresses I could have. And also, as an actress, I would never want to be told, you need to now imitate this actress, or you and this actress have to get together and talk about how you're going to be like each other. That's only going to limit your expression. And I realized, unless you're 4 years old, really, if you're 4, okay, fine, you might actually believe that these 2 people are the same person. But if you're a grown up, and this is definitely a movie for grown ups, got 2 formidable, grown, full-fledged artists, no one's going to believe Olivia Colman and Jessie Buckley are the same person. So instead, forget it. Just don't worry about it. Like let's all, as adults, get on the boat together and agree that for the purposes of this story, these 2 women are going to act out the same person. So if you make this kind of poetic agreement with the audience, like let the wires show and it still looks magic on stage. Like the Tony Kushner says that in the beginning of Angels in America.
America. Yeah.
Um, then they're utterly free. Then, they don't have to have like an eye twitch or a neck tattoo to like let everyone know they're the same. We know, and then in fact, and I did not know this until later, I knew I had to give them utter freedom. I can't even imagine trying to tell Jessie Buckley that she has to act like Olivia Colman. She would have hated it. But then what I realized after is the more different they are, the better. Because what it tells you, what it allows you to imagine about the 20 years that you don't get to see is like, what was that life that turned Jessie Buckley into Olivia Colman?
Mm, that's amazing. So the actresses never discussed their approaches, accents, nor
They did
physicality.
talk about, what they say is that they had one quick conversation about the accent, because of course
Mm,
Jessie can't be Irish, which she is, and Olivia English. But even the accent, I was like, whatever, your accent changes in
yeah.
20 years. You've moved to the States and, you've whatever. But they made a decision about their accent, that they're gonna be kind of Northern English. Um, and Olivia asked me if she could see some of Jessie's work, because Jessie shot all her stuff first in 8, 9 days. And I said, look, Olivia, yeah, if you want to, you can. I'll ask Jessie how she feels about it, but you really don't need to. And she said, no, I think I'd like to. And I got her a couple of Jessie scenes, and Olivia says she looked at them for 30 seconds and went, no, 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 this is wrong.
One aspect that I find utterly fascinating is the fact that you had started your pre-production setting the story in Cape Cod, and then here
Yeah.
comes the pandemic and you had to pivot it, and then you guys end up in Greece. But
Yeah.
production design, your production designer, brilliant, did create the scenes that we see in Boston, that we see in the East
Yeah.
Coast,
Yeah.
they were all shot in Greece.
Mm-hmm.
And how was it that to create two separate worlds in Greece, and one is totally, I never thought we were not in the East Coast.
That's why all the windows are blown out. You have to forgive us for that. um, yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll quickly give you the story of that. And so the
I hope
book.
you don't mind me asking you all this production.
No, no, I love this. I love this. I really do. And you know what? It's so much a part of the artistic life of the movie. It's funny. Jeff Bridges, who I think lives in,
In Santa Barbara, yeah,
yeah,
in Montecito.
he and I were just chatting for a second just now, actually, and I was remembering him saying something to me when we did Crazy Heart, where he said everything goes in the pot. The feelings you have about this person goes in the pot of the movie. The whatever, all the logistics, it all goes in the pot, and that's certainly, I totally believe that. And that was my experience as always as an actress and certainly as a director. But so, okay, the book takes place in southern Italy, the beach outside of Naples. I adapted it originally, yeah, to be, it wasn't necessarily Cape Cod. It was like some unnamed Eastern Seaboard town, lobster rolls and boardwalks and a gothic feeling like Maine. We scouted Maine, and then my producers were like, so Maine has a 5% tax incentive. Not possible. Okay, so then we scout Jersey, because Jersey has a 37% tax incentive. And all of a sudden we're like, it's happening in Jersey. And I was really unsure about it. It really wasn't what I wanted, but it could work. And we didn't have any money and it was moving very fast. And then the pandemic happened, and we still were moving forward as if Jersey was happening. We had our money for Jersey, and that's a big deal. And one day I wrote a letter and I said to my financiers and my producers, look, first of all, New Jersey, their numbers are so bad. But even if it were possible, I don't want to shoot there. And it was really the first move I made as a director. And it's funny, I made the move in the way that I would have made it as an actress. I wrote like a essay, you know, everything perfectly said, a little funny, not too pushy, to try to get what I wanted, which I've learned to do as an actress. And I realized I didn't have to do that as a director. Everyone just went, okay, great, let's go back to the drawing board. But by then we were in a pandemic, so we went to Rhode Island, who originally their film fund was full, but we were thinking, well, first of all, we had a ticking clock on us too. It was like by this point, it was maybe April, and we had to shoot by the end of the summer because everyone's on the beach in their bathing suits, or we lose a year. So we're like trying Rhode Island, but we realized no, we could never get visas for everybody. Then we go, how about Nova Scotia? Which kind of looks like Maine. They did not want us because they were COVID shy, and we were really international, British and Irish and Israeli producers, French DP. And then they said, could I shoot in the UK? Because the UK was getting back up into production. And I was like, no, I don't know how to make a movie about a British woman on vacation in England. I don't know what the milk looks like in the fridge. I don't know how to do that. And then one day, like out of nowhere, really, like as if it was from a dream, I thought, what about Greece? Like in Greece, I'm an outsider as much as the character is an outsider. It's okay if I don't know what the milk looks like or if it looks foreign to me. Um, Now I think, of course, Greece. Greece is like the fountain, the source of like the mother. I mean, could you get more to the source there? I mean, I don't know, but so many things that were valuable and important in my film came to me in that way, kind of having access to the unconscious.
And going back to my question about the production design, was it strenuous to create a New England
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
sequel?
yeah. Sorry, right. Well,
No,
yeah.
no, no.
I mean, well, my production designer who was working with me, Inbal Weinberg, she was working with me when we were gonna do the sort of Cape Cod Maine version. And when we made the switch, she said, Maggie, we're gonna look at each other in the middle of production and say, how could we possibly have imagined this anywhere other than Greece? And that is totally what happened. So yeah, in terms of creating it, yes. I mean, we chose Spetses Island, which is where we shot, partially because it had this incredible, I mean, kind of like 19th century old boys' school, which is actually the school that the Magus, the John Fowles book, is based on, in
Wow.
the center of the island, really small island. But it was built in a kind of, it sort of looks like English or something, European in a way. And it had closed in 1981, and they just closed the doors and left. And so that became our home base, and our production offices, and that's where we built this kind of brownstone looking apartment. Um, but yeah, so was it hard? I mean, it was hard in that we can't look out the window, I mean, the playground, that scene in the playground, we were like, how are we going to find a playground, in the middle of this island in Greece that feels like you could be in Philly or New York or Boston? And yeah, we did it. We were limited in what direction we could shoot in and how we could, but I do think it really works, and it's a real testament to both Helen and Inbal.
Yeah. Um, you you add a thriller undertone to the film. If when I introduced the film to the audience at the theater, I mentioned Kubrick, I mentioned Polanski, where we navigate a landscape of the mind of the main
Yes.
character that goes into a thriller, almost horror world.
Yeah.
Can you talk about layering that the genre of a thriller into it?
Yeah, well, I mean, in some ways, yes, I would say probably I have so many thoughts about this and so many things to say, so I'll try to stay organized. But I think, I guess I think that some of these genres, oh, I don't want to be reductive about it, but I do think that when women make movies, they are in a slightly different language. I think we speak a slightly different language. Our experience is different. And so I've seen a few things lately made by women where I feel like, what genre is this? This is a sort of a new one, you know? At the same time, I'm really influenced by many films that came before me. I mean, I'm looking at your 8.5 poster behind you in your screen, and Knights of Cabiria was a huge influence on this movie for me. And Antonioni and Godard, even in his like ironic sort of thriller thing, you know, I'm very moved by that language. And I guess I was sort of curious. I have so many things to say. One is, if you have a clear narrative and a recognizable language to hang your hat on, I think in between the scaffolding of that clear, recognizable language, it offers you more freedom. So I was like, if I make this a thriller with these clear steps and this language we know, in between the steps, there can be wild expression because the audience knows how to follow the story in a recognizable language. I also was interested in the idea of, well, of course, there's a whole lot in this movie of people being watched, right? So obviously there's a whole language of how women are watched and how women are observed and how women are adored, you know? And I think there are obviously silly versions of that, kind of ridiculous versions of that, objectifying versions of that, that I don't really actually think anyone thinks are that hot. And then there are great versions of that, like Antonioni and Godard, for instance. The women in those movies, Monica Vitti or Anna Karenina, like I want to be like them. I've cut my hair like them. I've worn their clothes. I understand how compelling they are. But I was interested in, I really did shoot Dakota like that for the whole first third of the movie, observed that way over Olivia's face, very classic. And then what happens if that person who's been being adored, being observed, being, you know, caressed by the camera, walks into the frame and has her own set of really intense needs, hunger, beyond what's acceptable? What happens then? What does the language look like after that? You know? So I guess I felt like I wanted to hang my hat on a kind of classic thriller form. Um, um, Strengthened by all of these incredible movies that I admire that have come before me, and then start to play around with, well, what's my genre? What's my language in between the scaffolding of that classic form?
Which leads nicely to my next question about the character of Lida. She is transgressive, but she's highly relatable. And in another director's hands, she could have been crazy and labeled crazy and easily dismissed. But she is so just fascinating. You know, can you tell us about sculpting this character?
Well, I mean, it was very important to me. One, like I said, so many valuable things came to me either in the jazz of working with Helene, the allowing the space into the unconscious, but I knew intellectually from the beginning that this woman could not be crazy. I think the movie, one of the main things that it's trying to do is to normalize a much, much bigger spectrum of feelings about, in general, being a woman in the world, being a mother, yes, but also being a lover and a thinker and an artist, that the spectrum of feelings is way of normal feelings. That's my dog, is way bigger than we're used to seeing expressed. That said, look, she does some things that are really transgressive and aberrant. I mean, aside from stealing the doll, which is very strange, maybe just, she leaves her kids, and she causes probably almost unbearable pain both to herself and to these children. So this is an extreme example. And what we're asking the audience to try to do is to see if they can be brave enough to acknowledge the ways in which they relate to her. And so if she's crazy, then the movie, I don't know why to make it, because then you just go, oh my God, look at this crazy woman. Oh, I'm such a good mama. I would never do any of these things. I've never fantasized this. I've never considered this. This has never crossed my mind. I'm so good. I'm so good. That's not the point. And I think there's, I don't know what this is, but a fascination with watching really formidable, powerful women be crazy in movies. And these are movies, I'm talking movies that like probably everyone, including me and you, like love.
Yeah.
A Woman Under the Influence, or I mean, there's so many, right? Really interesting women be crazy. That's not what this is. This is the opposite of that. This is sanity, and human behavior actually is this big. It's not this big. And particularly for women on film, I think the spectrum of acceptable behavior is pretty small.
So many, this character is resonating with so many people, in particular women, and mothers. How what is your reaction to the way the film has been embraced and the character of Lida?
Oh, I think Ferrante, in so much of her work and in this book, is telling the truth about something that we've agreed not to talk about. And I even think we've agreed not to think about. But that doesn't make it go away. And I think there's something inherently dramatic about telling the truth, but in particular about telling the truth about something that's taboo. I think everybody leans in for that. And I think I felt when I read her work kind of electrified by some of these truthful things being articulated, disturbed, but also comforted to know, wow, if this person is writing this down so uncompromisingly honestly, I'm not alone in feeling some of these things. And I know that even though the movie is very different from the book, part of my job was to act as a translator, to take this very valuable, delicate truth and put it into another form. No
coincidence, you talk about translating, and Lida is a translator.
Yeah, I know. And in fact, she's not a translator in the book. I think I must have made her a translator because that's me. It's true. In a way, that's what I'm doing. And I felt it was really, that was like the most important thing to me, was not to put anything in the movie that I didn't think was truthful. It can be extreme. It can be so strange. It can be, I mean, it's hard to understand this thing with the doll. It's impossible to understand it. In fact, one of the things Ferrante said to me, I didn't speak with her, but we emailed only a few times, but she said to me, the secret to the doll is, I don't know why I took the doll. And I understand completely, because you're like, a lot of people have asked me, why did she take the doll? Like, I can't analyze that. That doesn't work intellectually. It only works in the unconscious, in the world of the mind. So you just go, it doesn't make sense, but I understand.
Yeah, and that's one of the beautiful things about the films, that you don't answer everything. It's left to, a lot of it is left to interpretation and for us to do the homework. And
But
there's
those are the movies I love. Movies that do that to me, like Lucretia Martel or Matteo Garrone, where you're like, am I crazy that I think this is what's happening, or is that what's happening? I love that feeling.
which leads me to my last question about the names. Lida, Nina, Elena, Mina, which is the nickname of the young doll. Those are all names that could almost be interchangeable.
Yeah.
That's intentional, right?
That is mostly from the book. In fact, the book, which is all like that, I remember when I was starting to take it apart and do the adaptation, I had to write down Leda, older woman on the beach, Nina, younger mother. I had to really, and then when I was writing, strange things would happen. Like I call the doll Mini Mama.
Ha!
Um, and she says I used to call her Mini Mama, but I wrote that came out of my mind. But then she's also called Mina, and that's from the book. And then Dakota, one day when we were shooting, she just improvised, very little improvising, but one little beautiful thing she improvised. She says, I had a doll. I had a doll like that. Her name was Mina, and Dakota said Nina. So that is from the book, the very intertwined nature of the names. And in fact, it's in all of her books. Um, and I just let it lay and let it be a part of the film and sort of let it see where it all fell.
Well, Maggie, I could go on talking to you for much long, but I don't want to keep you. Thank you so much. What an incredible directing and writing, and I can't wait for what's next. Are you working on another project now as a director?
I am working on another project. I'm just getting kind of into something. So
Well, we will be rooting for you and
thank you.
looking forward to your next project. And congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was really nice.
Likewise. Talk to you soon.